Hello and welcome to my brand new podcast. I'm Nicky Raby and I'm thrilled that you're joining us. I do lots of things. I'm an actor, coach, writer, speaker and a mum. And in my coaching work, I work with creatives, personal brands, freelancers and small businesses. In this podcast, I want to talk about success, but not in the traditional sense. I want to bring you conversations that discuss success, what it means, and how there are many different versions. We're going to be talking about business, branding, becoming visible, saying no, saying yes, and how you can create a thriving portfolio career doing more of what you love and less of what you don't. Sometimes there can be a certain mystery around the online world, so I'm going to be asking my guests how they started and grew, how they get paid, how they stand out, and how they create success on their terms. As always, please check the show notes for all things we mention and come and say hi over on social media at Nicky Raby or via my website nickyraby.com/podcast. In today's episode, I talk to Emily Brooks, who is a designer and a psychotherapist. Her greeting cards and paper goods are stocked online and in retailers across the UK, and she's the founder of the FIT program, a focused identity therapy course that helps people to uncover identity, combat fear, and refocus their future. If you want to come and join in the conversation, Instagram is probably the best place. Go to instagram.com/Nicky Raby and let us know what your thoughts are. Also, if you're interested in working with me one-on-one, go to my coaching page or join one of my online courses. And also, as always, all the show notes are on the podcast page, nickyraby.com/podcast. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Hi, Emily. How are you?
Hi, Nicky. I'm well, thank you. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so pleased to have you. I'd love for you to share what you do and a little bit more about yourself to kick things off.
My name's Emily Brooks and I'm a designer of cards and paper goods. So I have greetings cards in stockists sort of around the UK and some internationally and then online as well. I started that business last year, sort of March, sometime 2017. So that's fantastic. Love doing that. And then I'm also a psychotherapist. So I'm part-time. I have clients and I also founded something called the FIT program, which is a focused identity therapy program, 3 weeks for people to help to uncover their identity and combat fear, sort of refocus their future. So yeah, lots of different things going on, lots of juggling, and I have 2 children just to throw into the mix.
Just to, just for ease,
Yeah.
And how did, let's go back a little bit, sort of what's your background and how did you get into these areas of having different strings to your bow, as it were?
I mean, I've always been a person who enjoyed different things, as I can remember that right from being very little. But I did sort of fine art originally, and then went on to do a foundation course in art and design. So I'd always loved design, always loved drawing. And then, interestingly, went into sort of video and filming towards the end of my foundation year, and did my degree in film production. So that was awesome. I mean, it was really, really cool. I got to work with my husband a lot. He works in camera. And so I worked for a while as a freelance film, sort of producing things, directing things. My husband and I had our own little production company. So I guess I kind of started doing business on my own terms at that point, sort of after graduating. My husband and I also, when we got married, we went to the States and decided to volunteer our film skills for a charity. So we got to travel around the world, basically creating films that then help to bring awareness to incredible causes. So that was a really informative and incredible part of my life, which is amazing. And then came back and had 2 children and loved it, but found it really full on and really hard, second baby particularly. But during that phase, I had some training, and as a counsellor, I'd always wanted to do it. I've always been fascinated by people. At the end of the day, when I was on set, I would always end up just talking to people about their deepest, darkest problems. Yes. And I love being creative. I've always had that huge streak in my body, but I love people even more. I just love their stories. I just love to get down to what they're struggling with, what they love. So that has always been there. So I started that training, and did that part-time, and then through maternity continued that training. So then, yeah, it was quite an interesting thing. I kind of came out of having my second maternity leave with 2 boys who were gorgeous, but the second baby having thrown me quite a lot, having had some PND, and now with this counselling diploma, but just kind of not really sure what next, and feeling like my identity had got really sort of murky and not really sure where to go next. So that was kind of that was last year at about March time, where I began to go, right, I really want to do something for myself. So I actually had some therapy, which was fantastic and really helped me hone sort of down to what I wanted to do. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to go back to my roots of doing some artwork and designing. And I just started designing something. Didn't really have any plan for it, and put my son in 1 day of childcare and made that my me day to start working. And yeah, so that's kind of where that started. And then I just, before long, I had a kind of card collection, and was really enjoying just creatively coming up with something. And then went to my local shop and said, who was a friend of mine who worked there, and said, do you think you could take these on? And she goes, I would, but I think maybe they need to be a little bit better quality. So that was my first kind of really good critical advice. So
that moment of gulp. Okay.
Moment, yeah, I know. And went back home and just went, okay, and sort of rejiggled, and kind of upped the product quality standards. And then it was really helpful, because then I went back, she was like, brilliant, perfect, we'll stop them. And that was kind of the first part of the professional journey of it, really. And then ever since then, it's just been, going to the other stockists, trade shows, pushing it, and it's been great. And I guess through this year, well, I mean, I've always found that I do different things, but what has been my journey of uniquely discovering who I am is that I do more than one thing, and that's brilliant.
Yes.
And you don't have to just do one thing. I think that's something that people will often say to me, oh, so which one are you going to choose? Are you going to be a designer, or are you going to be a counsellor? And it's like, well, actually, I'm just going to do both, because I literally love it. And you can make space. You can design your life. You can make space for both. So yeah, that's a really big nutshell, throwing everything in there at you of what's been happening in my life. Yeah.
I love the way that you describe as sort of taking a step back to look at your identity and sort of the next steps. What did that look like for you? Or are there any practical tips, I guess, that you could share of how important it is to take that time for yourself to reflect and then maybe reconsider what the next steps look like?
I think it looks so different for everybody, but I think if some people can have a really strong sense of identity and they really know what they want to do and they're really excited and really fulfilled in their life, and then something will throw them. So something might happen and then life changes and life feels quite different and they need to kind of refocus it. Or sometimes it's a sense they've never really had that. They've never really felt, this is who I am and I'm doing what I really want to be doing. I think fulfillment is really the thing we're looking for. Happiness is so the thing, isn't it? How can we be happy? How can we pursue happiness? But I think for me, it's all about finding fulfillment. And then when a stressful day comes, it's stressful, but you still know that what you're doing at the end of the day in your life is bringing you fulfillment. So for me, I think what was helpful was taking time out. I did 6 weeks of therapy. I just did it on the NHS at the time, actually, just when I had PND. But that's postnatal depression. I just felt like I needed to take the time out to go, what on earth has happened? And I love my boys, but there was like, I didn't recognize myself. And it's incredible how quickly patterns and habits and ways of thinking can completely change the lens on our life.
Yes.
And I think the way I believe it is we are life is like the camera. And it's constantly recording, and you put a lens on the front of that camera, and that's what's going to be seen and what's going to be printed onto the tape. And I think if you're sort of, that lens is clear and it is yourself, it's your kind of core identity, and you're living it through it, then you feel fulfilled, and that tape's exciting to watch back. But if you're kind of living it through a hazy one that's not really one you've put on yourself, and it feels like I'm just kind of living life and I'm just letting life live me. I'm not really living it the way I want it to be doing. So it feels like that tape, you wouldn't really enjoy watching it back. So that's kind of where I was going, I'm not really in control here. I think sometimes we need to acknowledge that we can either just carry on as it is, or we can take time out, just really focus on basically putting ourselves first and why we're struggling and why things have become really hazy and hard to sort of grasp. So I think for me, that was a mixture of things. It was the therapy. It was meeting out with friends who I could really trust, who tell you what you need to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear. And just having it really, really taking time out to go, I want to change something. And that sometimes takes accountability. And so the program that I run is for people to do exactly that. It's just about saying, look, it's 3 weeks. You deserve this, you deserve taking 3 weeks out of your life. And sometimes it's more than 3 weeks for people, obviously. And it's a beginning of a journey. But for me, that's what it was really. And I'm trying to remember back, but the creative process for me was healing, for want of a less cheesy word. It was literally like, I think when you start to remember who you are at the core, like your very authentic self, and you start to do things out of that self, I tell you, the feeling of doing it, it's like a kind of child being given the best toy. You sort of feel like, oh my goodness. And you don't worry that you don't know where it's going. I think there is always that worry once you start to get into it. You start to go, okay, I'm actually doing this. I'm pursuing a business, or I'm pursuing a hobby, or I've taken on a new job, or whatever it might be. And you start to go, okay, hang on, where is this going? And that's a fear everyone has. But if you started it because you loved it and you took every next step because you loved it, the sense of worry gets trumped, I guess you could say, by the conviction that you're doing the right thing.
Absolutely. And just listening to yourself and your internal sort of rhythm of, it always tells you, and when I don't trust my gut and I wander off elsewhere and do what everybody else wants me to do, or just, I guess, not true to myself, or I get distracted, I always have to take myself back to that place. And how has it been counselling and connecting with lots of women? Because I know that you're such a supporter on places like Instagram. You're always so caring and always make such an effort to chat to people, especially when I see you in real life. What are the things that have come up for your clients, or what are the stories and the common threads? Because I think it's really important to acknowledge them, because when we're sitting at home, especially if, the early days of motherhood are hard, or we're trying to balance a business and kids, or, all the other life circumstances, we can feel like we're the only ones who haven't got this figured out, and we're the only one who is struggling. What comes up in the conversations that you have?
I think there's a common thread, whether we're talking about business or about motherhood or about life. I think two things come forward really strongly. One is fear, sense of I can't do it, I'm too afraid, or I'm afraid I'm doing it wrong. And the second thing that comes up, I think, is there's I'm failing, or I'm not good enough. And I think that's something that we all feel and is a human thing, but it can become the focus. It can become the part that's the most loud.
Yes.
So I think those two things come forward quite strongly, especially in the Instasphere, because I think people can project whatever they want of themselves onto Instagram. So I think people quite understandably get this idea of, a friend of mine was saying the other day, she was going, I'm just watching all these people having all this fun and hanging out in pubs and smiling. And I said the other day, have you recently hung out in a pub and smiled? And she goes, yeah, yesterday. I was like, did you take loads of photographs of it? And she goes, no. I was like, did you upload it online? She said, no. I was like, were you still having fun? She went, yes. And I think the thing is that people think that if it's not shared, it's not online, then it's not real.
Yes.
And we look at our peers or our Insta crush that we have, or whatever it might be, and we're thinking, look at them, doing all that perfectly. So it can be very dangerous. It can also be extremely powerful, Instagram, as we all know. But I think the thing is, with clients and with people sort of DMing me or talking to me about what they're struggling with, the fear and the sense they're not doing well enough. And I think the biggest thing that we come back to, with particularly with parenting, is that old, there's a wonderful book by Winnicott which is about this, but it's basically about saying, if you try and be perfect, you end up being not good enough. But if you try and be good enough, you end up being good enough. And I think there's room for everybody to be imperfect. And I remember talking to my tutor on my diploma and asking, is there anything as a dysfunctional family? And this would work for dysfunctional. Is anything as a functional family, or a functional job or a functional life? Is it even possible? And he said, absolutely. He said a functional family is one that is imperfect and is honest about their imperfections and can basically put that out there and say, look, I got it wrong, or I have a weakness. And then in that mess, you find a real richness. So I think when we look at that as our goal instead, whether it's work or it's parenting, we mess up, we get it wrong, we shout, we're not there enough, or we are there too much and we miss out on work, or whatever it is. And that juggle is hard. It's about acknowledging that we're not trying to be perfect. We're just trying to be good enough. And in doing that, you're sharing in your weaknesses. And how much more rich is that as an experience that your children particularly are going to learn from? So that's a bit of a rambling sort of journey, sort of exploration around that, really. But that's something I talk about a lot with clients, really, about exploring what good enough looks like for their life.
I remember when I we made the decision to, the nursery place came up and he started to go for 2 days a week. And up until that point, I'd been working in nap times, late into the evening, and basically any spare hour of, opportunity that I had. And that sense of keeping both the plates spinning at the same time was just really tough. But still, even when he went to nursery, I which is bizarre because people do it much earlier, and there's all kinds of different circumstances, and it's not like I was sending him to prison. I was sending him somewhere really nice that he was going to have a lovely time. But still, I felt that sense of, am I doing the right thing? But having 6 months on from now doing that, I can look back and go, actually, now I have a bit of distance and I have a bit more balance and time for myself, and actually time where I'm solely focusing on my business and my brand and career. I'm actually a better parent because, for one, I have more money, so I can go out and we can do much better things. I feel like I'm much more of a contributor. And it was really important as well just to realize how much my career was part of my identity. And that was quite shocking to me at first. I sort of knew that I'd loved it, but unpicking it in that way was a bit of a shock to the system.
I think often we go into everything, but particularly parenting, with expectations of who we're going to be as a mum or as a woman or as a person. And I think so often we surprise ourselves with one, that our identity changes and molds. It's not static, and it kind of changes as we go along. But also the fact that we might want different things to what we thought we would. So I remember thinking, when I have children, I'm going to find my purpose. That's going to be what's going to make me so happy. And it's going to be like, I'll work, but I'll kind of I'll work a bit, but I'll be so up for coming home, and that'll be where I find all my happiness. And it's interesting because, yes, I find such purpose from being a mum, and I love my children. But I realised that I felt this huge turmoil when I realised, actually, I really want to be away from them right now, and I want to be doing something for me. And that was a really hard thing to come to terms with. Not that it was all the time, but I certainly felt that quite strongly. And I think you start to realise that you have to just keep it with an open mind constantly, and know that there's going to be phases for each thing. So there may be a phase when you feel, what, I do want to work. But for you, you're thinking, well, right now it's not possible, and you have to sort of wait, and that can be really tricky for people. Or maybe it's the fact that it's actually, I've been waiting too long, and it's time to start something new. So, and it's so different for every single person. But I think the main thing, it's a bit like the identity. You have with your identity, you have to take the time out to, when you're in it, when you're in the middle of feeding and doing kids stuff, and in the middle of trying to answer emails, and it's very tricky to really genuinely take time out to work out what you want. And I think taking time back, and that for me means 10 minutes when you're waiting for the tube, or you're literally in a bath, rather than letting the normal swamping day-to-day thoughts come in, having a few questions that you ask yourself, and you just spend time really, really thinking about it, about closing your eyes. And visualization is so powerful. Who am I at my core? What am I doing in 5 years? What do I want to be doing? What does that look like? Or what do I want to be doing next week? What does that look like? And you don't analyze yourself, and you don't bring any mum guilt in, and you don't let yourself second guess yourself. You just really listen to what that heart says. And it's so often very clarifying, I think, for people to take that time out. And then it's about just making small changes, practical changes. And if you know you want to have more childcare and you want to be doing more in terms of work, or in terms of even just trying to earn some more money or pursuing something that you are passionate about, it doesn't have to be all or nothing straight away. You can do small things, and people forget you can always change things too.
Yes,
you can put a child in 1 day of childcare, see how it feels financially, see how it feels emotionally, see how it feels for a month or two, and you can always change it. And if you feels good and it does make a difference and something kicks in for you, then you can either keep it or add to it, or you can take it away if it's not right. So I think people forget that as well.
I think also there used to be that sense of, for me, like, oh, well, when he sleeps through the night, everything will be fine. Or
Absolutely.
When he can crawl, then my life will be easier. But actually, I mean, that was a very naive point of view, because as humans, we're always changing, and evolving. And sometimes he'll do something completely random, like I'm like, oh, I cannot believe that we're now dealing with this situation. And just being open to, he kind of slaps you around the face going, oh, right, okay, parenting mode, right, let's get into that. But
But it's the same for work. It's the same for any particular sort of context. You can't get yourself into the position where you think once that happens, it's gonna be great, because you just never know, do you? Yeah. Sorry, go on. Ask. You really
don't know. I was gonna say how because especially with the card business, it's really grown quickly, and you're stocked in all kinds of fantastic places. How did you move from that sort of grey area of being unsure, of not really knowing your sense of direction, to making progress really quickly?
Yeah. Well, I'm of some people will say, and I totally agree with them, for them, that you need to wait until you know exactly what you're doing and exactly what you want to do, exactly what your product's going to look like, or exactly what that job is going to look like, before you move, and you need to know your USP, your unique selling point, before you start. And for me, I'm quite different. I believe that you need to just start, and that means literally, for me, it was, I suppose I can only really speak from what I did. I just started getting out my pencil and paper and just drawing and seeing what I enjoyed. And I had obviously nap times and evenings I had before, but for me personally, that didn't work for me. I found it very hard to focus in nap times, and actually during that time, before my youngest son was 1, I wasn't really sure at that point that I wanted to even start a business or anything. I just was feeling really low and unsure, and really just life was quite messy for me. So it was more just trying to even get laundry done and trying to stay on top of a life admin.
Yeah.
But when I got
to the toilet by yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, literally, sometimes I'm amazed, Nicky, that you did that with nap time. It's incredible to do that. So I think for me, I'm quite different. I'm not actually great at multitasking whatsoever. I'm the person where when people come over for dinner or supper, which hardly ever happens because my house is a mess, so I don't invite anyone over. But if I'm in my kitchen cooking, I have to be in my kitchen cooking. I literally can't talk to anyone. So I'm not very good at doing 2 things at once. So for me, I said, okay, I'm going to put Arlo, my youngest son, in nursery for 1 day a week, and I'm just going to do it as a test, and I'm going to start something, and I don't know what it's going to look like, and it's going to be creative. And I started that, and it was the most exciting thing. And the first day, I think my husband was secretly hoping that the first day that I put him in nursery, we would go off on like a date day, and we probably should have done. But instead, I was
stay in bed all day and have a lovely time.
Just stay in bed all day, watching TV. But I was actually so excited to do something just for myself for a whole entire day that I just was raring to go. So I just started creatively drawing. I tried lots of different styles, and those first few weeks were so, if I look back, nothing of what I did, except for actually one design, nothing of what I did I now use or it looks anything like my style now. Literally looks nothing like it. And I remember drawing, it was kind of lots of black and white and pen and stuff, and then I started printing some stuff, and then I thought that was it. Then I made one design on my computer that I liked, which had a black block background and had a penguin on it, and I still have that as a card today. And I remember going, this would make a nice card. And so I I organised to have it printed as a card, and that was that one that I told you about that I took into a shop. So literally, I didn't make it start out going, I'm gonna have a card business and I'm gonna do that. I just started creatively doing what I did. Then what I had about, I would say, 10 designs of different cards I could create. I then showed friends of mine and said, look, I've got these different designs, and they were lovely because they're my friends. They're like, oh, we love them all, love. And so then we're like, okay, well, how do I decide which ones to go with? But my friend said to me, oh, well, those 3 are all kind of the same style and they're all kind of nice. And there was like 3 animals, a tiger, a penguin, and I can't remember the other one, which one it was. Oh, ladybird. And I went, okay, I'll go with that because there's a sort of succinct style there. And I started just doing more of them, and I created cards for them, and I took them to the shops. And before I knew it, there was a thread emerging, a block background of colour and an illustrated animal or image on the front. And so that kind of grew. And it's funny because I tried other things. I tried bringing in other designs, but people would say, oh, that's not really very you, is it? Your style is more those other ones. And I went, wasn't even aware that I had a style. But before you knew it, your unique selling point can grow organically like that. And I would just say that to people because I think there's so much out there, and as people get so overwhelmed with waiting until they come up with the thing that's going to make them so miraculously different. And I just think I would say to them, just start, and you are different already. You are unique. You have an incredibly different self than anyone else, and you'll be surprised at the individuality you will put on something if you're just given the space and the time to just try. And that comes in any context. You know, as a coach, you'll find your style is different from another coach, and so it's just giving yourself the time. So I had that one day, and then that one day before I knew it was really full. My son was loving his nursery. It was great, and financially, you need to start earning some money. I live in London; it's no joke.
Yeah.
So it was like, right, I'm going to do another day, and I started to get the sense of, right, if I'm going to do this, I've got to do this. I can't waste time playing at business doing. I've got to give it a go.
Get my felt tips out today and do a few things. It's got to, pay its way. Yeah,
it's got to pay its way. But at the same time, I was just in that position of like, I've got to do this because I'm enjoying it and loving it. And so, and that's how it kind of started. And I did combat a lot of fears, but I think the excitement and the feeling, having felt quite, my Alexa's talking. Does anyone ever get that where their Alexa just pipes up? Pipe down, Alexa.
Suddenly joining in, go, yes, right, Emily, I was watching you and you were doing all those things.
Yeah, she knows.
No, you were watching this morning, Emily. You weren't working on your business.
Alexa's always watching. But so that's kind of the start. And I did combat fear. And I had my husband who used to say to me, like literally from day one, I tell you, Nikki, like he used to say to me, John Lewis. So I would show him a picture that I'd done or a new card design. He'd go, oh, it's great, John Lewis, and then he'd basically walk away. And it obviously he was encouraging me in a different kind of a way, where he was going, I love it, but I want to see this in a big shop. And I guess for me it was like, oh gosh, well that's far off. But actually, it showed me something of like, well, why not? Why not John Lewis? And I got this whole new sort of belief that you kind of have to create your opportunity. And I have spent the last year doing things I would never have done. Honestly, this stylist live contact that I have, which I won't go too much into, but I basically found this person, tracked them down, and emailed and got in touch and pitched myself, and it's really scary, but it's something that you start to feel, it's quite addictive. You start to feel like, actually, if I can do that, then maybe I could do that. But that was not me a while back. So
And so how do you do that? How do you get yourself in that frame of mind from like, oh, this is not the type of person I am, to I'm going to give it a go?
It's a combination of things, but I think it's got, there's so many things. It's like if you imagine a child is been trapped in a room their whole life, sadly, and that's all they've ever known, and it's not great, obviously. And it's like you can either, with counselling, you help them to understand why they were there, what's been painful for them, and why that's happened. But the most important thing to do is to call them out of that room and into something new. But they're not going to come out unless they can actually start to see what freedom might look like. It's too scary to come out in something new. It's what they've known their whole life. So it's like an image of why things like visualization are so important, because you can sit there and say to them, okay, what might life look like outside of this room? And they start to say, oh, it's like a garden, or it's like this, or there's a road, or whatever they might see. And the more we visualize freedom, the more sort of the deeper the incentive then is to pursue it. So there's going to always be the fear of what's uncertain, what's new, and where there genuinely might be rejection and difficulty. There's going to be those fears. But if we can focus on visualizing and fostering a sense of self that is ahead of that, so has succeeded, is doing well, and is full of potential and excitement, if we can foster that, the more that then we have the courage to face the fear. So I think, and then what happens is then we realize that actually there isn't really such thing as failures. The more that we kind of make way and pave way, the more, and we actually do start to feel a sense of satisfaction in what we're doing, the more that feeds the reality of the visualization that you have, rather than the reality of your fear. So it's quite hard to sort of put that into very practical steps of what to do. But I guess it's a process of choosing every morning to go, this is who I am, this is what I'm capable of, this is what I could do, and that's what I'm going to choose to do. And then when the fear crops up, you kind of look at it and you analyze it. So, for example, I spoke to this student the other day and I said, what are you afraid of? Because I'm afraid of failing. I said, what does failing look like? And he said, I suppose it's because he's a product designer. He said, I suppose people wouldn't like my product. I said, how would you know they didn't like your product? He said, I suppose people would say it wasn't good enough. And I said, well, what does that tell you? And he said, well, I guess that it wasn't good enough. So what would you do? I'd make it better. Is that failing? No. And it's interesting how people see failure and what failure actually is. And it's usually more about how people see them and the fear that people are going to not like them, not like what they're offering. That's more what they see as failure. So it's about a voice inside that counteracts that, that's actually louder, listening to the truest voice rather than the loudest voice that's in our head. Yeah, that's quite a sort of long explanation.
So it's so good, and it's so it's so real what you're saying, because actually picking up the phone, sending that email, being bold, reaching out can be crazy. But especially with this podcast, it's just almost the fact that it has been scary and out of my comfort zone. I have been rewarded, and people have loved it and responded. And
that's
I think
brilliant.
Sometimes you just have to do it. Nike said it best, didn't they? Hey, but
and just one thing to mention: some people think, oh, well, it's easy for you because you're confident. And I would just say, I there was one day when all I had to do was fill in a form for a passport, and had to go and turn it in at the passport office. And I literally couldn't even face doing that, honestly. And I got it wrong.
The same with Oscars. It took me ages.
Yeah. And I literally got the form wrong. I had to go in and ask for another one at the post office, I remember. And I remember the feeling of, I can't do this. I can't just go out and do that. And then I remember going to an event, and there was somebody there who I really wanted to talk to and wanted to work with. And I didn't talk to them, because who the heck has the courage to go up to somebody you don't know in the middle of the room and talk to them? It's not something that I used to find massively easy. And I think it depends, when I was working in film, I got used to those people and I was really confident in talking to them because they're the people I was working with every day. But when we're working for ourselves, everything is paving the way. You have to make new connections all the time, new people you're talking to, and it's not easy. I'm just there to tell you that it doesn't come naturally, and it does take daily self-fostering and self-love and self-talking to yourself. But it does work, and you can get there to the point where it becomes easier. Yeah.
And it's all, I can't remember who I heard it the other day, but it's like creating new sort of patterns in your head of every time you then get that new challenge, your brain goes, oh, it's all right, we've had this before, and you survived it, and it was all cool. And you're just gaining that momentum, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly, the momentum. And the physiology of it's fascinating. Your brain actually creates brain grooves. So there'll be a groove within your brain where when one thought happens, it triggers thoughts to then carry on ahead of it. So you will basically, once you have one thought, then your brain knows, oh, this is the groove I'm going to go down in order to as the pattern to respond to that thought. So you create habits and the ways you act to respond to thoughts. And when you start to challenge it and you start to create new grooves, you basically, first of all, you widen the options. So you then have the option of, okay, I could go down that thought pathway, or I could go down that thought pathway. And then the more that you go down the one that's positive, as in, I have a fear, I'm going to overcome it, and I'm going to send that email anyway, or I'm going to go up to that person anyway. The more you do that, the more that groove then deepens, and then that becomes the default. So it's actually physiological in our in our brain, and it's actually mapped. These habits, the more you do them, the more easy it becomes. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good, because I think also it's just having the actual biological information that sometimes we can all tell ourselves, this isn't going to work anyway, what's the point, will I ever get there? But the fact that it's actually scientifically true that if you keep working on those, then the grooves become deeper, then that's a great way of thinking about it. I just wanted to ask you one last question, which is, where would you like to be in 5 years' time?
It's a good question.
Relaxing.
It's weird being asked that myself. I ask people that right away. I think 5 years' time, I would love to have an international business. So I'd have my cards in shops sort of through the States and through Europe, which would be exciting, and across the world. And I'd love to be seeing lots of lovely clients. I guess you could say what I'm doing well now, but just maximized and on the next level. It's a lovely feeling to now feel like what I'm doing now is actually on the right path to what I want to be doing in 5 years. But I would definitely have, lovely time at home with my family, and just continuing to manage the balance and trying to get it good enough.
Yes.
But yeah, definitely seeing the business grow. And I'd love to be speaking more events. I love talking and speaking, as you can tell, love to chat away, and doing more things like this, working and collaborating with awesome people. So yeah, that's in a nutshell, really.
That's amazing, actually, how far you've come. And I think that's really encouraging for people to hear that as well, that, you were only mentioning sort of this time last year that you were in a fog, and now you can actually say, I'm on track. I know where I'm going. And sometimes we feel like it has to be 10 years of evolving or whatever, or we need 4 weeks in Bali to be able to figure it out. And actually, it's not. You can get quite quick results if you get your head down and get stuck in, as my northern dad would say. But
get stuck in. And actually, one of the things I would really challenge people on, and I was talking about this with somebody yesterday, is actually the danger of the thinking that actually if I just leave my life and go away on things like retreats are fantastic. Obviously, they're always good. If you ever get the opportunity and the money to do one, then do it. But I think what we can do is we can go away from life in terms of actually physically leave and go away and say, okay, I'm going to go and find myself somewhere else. The trouble is that if we're not finding ourselves where we are in what we're doing, it's very hard for it to have longevity. And I think when I say taking time out, I really literally mean taking small bits of time within our life already to focus and to think. And the more that we can actually hone in on that amidst the difficulties that we're having, and make that space amidst the difficulties, it's about conquering that in the now rather than perhaps running away and finding it somewhere else. So yeah, just what you said then, it's like, it's true. I think the way you find it quicker is by making the statement, I'm gonna work on myself in the now, here in the mess, rather than necessarily taking loads of time out or kind of waiting until, I'll wait till I've got money, I'll wait till I've got time.
Or the January the 1st moment of like, right, that's, even in September, October, I hear people almost winding down going, well, it's probably not going to happen for me this year, so I'll wait till next year. And actually on January the 1st, for the most part, most people are hungover, kind of in a cheese and wine coma, and that's not your best sort of starting point to go, right, do you know what, I'm going to change my life, because even sort of staggering through to the kitchen to get a glass of water could be a big deal. So,
yeah, absolutely. And actually it's been proven that time of year between January and April is actually the biggest depressive slump for people. And I think Christmas has its own special place in people who are very low lives, I think, for sure. But but it's that January to to April when the weather, there's a real sense of expectations not being fulfilled. There's so much going on, as we both know, but I think actually waiting till a point in the year when you think things are going to feel fresh, that's not the time of year when you're going to feel fresh necessarily. So, I think the now, or even just picking, for me, I love September. I'm a bit of a September girl. I think because I think of I think of term times when I was at school.
I kind of, even age 36, I want my mum to go and like buy me some new shoes and a haircut and a new little bag and pencil case.
New shoes and a haircut. There you go. That's a good idea. September. I think for me, I'm like, it's the new year. So
yes, yeah, I get much more sort of. I love those like last light days of that autumn time. It's different for everybody, and
it's different for everyone. But I think that the now is really good, and I think, and just address to those who are listening. I think sometimes we can be like, oh, it's all great saying take time out for myself and everything to work all this out, and we can just feel like we're already at the max. There's so much we're doing so much. There's so little space in our brains and our days sometimes. And I think I would just encourage you that I've totally felt that way myself. And I think things like this podcast or snippets of stuff, whether it's online, on social media, or with people that you trust and love in real life, snippets of stuff that are just going to fuel your truest self and your sense of identity and what you love and what you and the sort of self-care is really going to help you. So things, I'm going to get a cough now. Just doing things in little snippets that are going to really fuel that is a good start. Sometimes it's just acknowledging that you want it to change and that you're willing to start is the most important thing.
It really is. And just connecting with that is and giving yourself what you need, giving yourself that time and space. It's so crucial. But Emily, I've loved chatting. Thank you so much. If people want to find out more about what you do, your counselling, your program, your cards, all that good stuff, where should they go?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at Emily Brooks UK. That's mainly for my design business, but also for all sorts of other jolly gallivanting and things. And then there's links on there to the FIT program, which is at _fit_program. But you can also find it at www.thefitprogram.uk. And just either of those are great. You can just DM me, come and chill on Instagram. Come and play.
Yeah. Thank you. You are. I could literally chat with you all day.
Same with you. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Shall we do it?
All right. We'll see you soon.
Awesome.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye, Nikki. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I would love to hear what you thought of the episode and share any takeaways with me. Come and find me across social media at Nicky Raby, or you can visit the podcast page, nickyraby.com/podcast.